How's it going, boys? We're back at it again. On this one, we're going to be talking about the new gear sets and the Infix perks that we're getting in Season 10. I don't know if these are all of the ones that we're going to be getting at the release of Season 10, but these are the ones that we know so far. And anyways, let's jump right into it. So the first set that we're going to be talking about right here is going to be the healing set. So the two pieces of the healing set, it says 15% increased healing on targets outside of the sacred ground or beacon. That actually sounds incredible. Number 4, it says healing increased by 15% and the cooldown reduced by 5% on heal after holding a weapon for 10 seconds. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about it. So first and foremost, the thing that I want to talk about is like you can get this set piece pretty much in every single piece of gear that you are wearing, as long as you get these things right here that is called like focus set or X set, you know what I mean? So you can get a like normal piece of gear that is going to drop with the focus set or like the other set, right? It's not like a very specific piece of gear that comes with the set. Honestly, all of the gear that you get can come from the set as long as you get the gear from the respective place. I think that the developer said that we're going to be getting set pieces from Raid, Catacombs, and the PvP track. So expect to do those activities for you to get the set that you want. So let's go ahead and talk about the actual effect. So the two pieces, this one sounds really cool because this makes a healer not having to play with sacred ground or beacon. So maybe you can play with the other 3 abilities. And the other thing is, if you're utilizing a weapon like the flail or like the void gauntlet, which they also have like healing abilities with orb of decay or with mending vortex, that means that you're going to be healing for 15% more. Simply because the only 2 requirement is that the target that you're healing, including yourself, if it is not on top of a sacred ground or beacon, it will be healed for 15% more. Like the 2 set pieces, if you are like an off healer, especially now that the life staff is going to be off scaling with intelligence, that means that we can do a lot more builds with fire staff, life staff, void gauntlet, ice gauntlet, life staff, etc. So I will see a lot of people that like to heal or off heal using the 2 piece. Now the 4 piece, I don't see anybody using this one honestly, because it forces you to play with 1 weapon for 10 seconds, and pretty much in any type of scenario that's kind of unrealistic. In PvP, you will never stay with 1 weapon for more than 10 seconds unless the enemy is never looking at you, right? Which is pretty rare as a healer, that nobody's focusing you and you either have to use the rapier, the hatchet to get away from the enemy. And in PvE, usually the abilities that you use in PvE, especially if you're playing with a lot of melees, well, you will use that sacred ground and that beacon. So the 2 piece is not gonna really work. And then the 4 pieces, in PvE, you use the sacred ground beacon and then you literally weapon swap to play with the other weapons so you can support with damage, utility, buff, whatever, you know. So the 2 pieces really cool for PvP mostly, but this doesn't look too much of a PvE set for me. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of that. The next one that we're going to be talking about, it is like what I would consider the magical set. The previous one was the healer, so this one is if you're like a magic enjoyer. And the 2 pieces, it says magical weapons abilities do 7% less damage, but they store a charge of that weapon's element for 20 seconds. Activating an ability of a non-magical weapon will consume the charge and add a 10% weapon damage as that element to that attack for 10 seconds. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about here. First of all, magical weapons. These are the weapons that are under the magic category, and that is it, right? And that is fire staff, ice gauntlet, void gauntlet, and life staff. Just because other weapons might have some magical ability or they do magical damage like flail, blunderbuss, the abyss, crescent wave, etc. Yes, just because they can do magic damage, they are not considered a magical weapon. All right, it specifically says magical weapon abilities. Okay, the other thing is it says you can now store up to 2 charges of each element while at 2 charges, you gain 10% resistance to that damage of that element. Now, right here, it says they stored a charge of that weapon's element for 20 seconds. What I think they mean by this, by the way, I honestly think that this whole paragraph here is pretty confusing. But what I think they mean here is the fire staff is going to always be fire. I honestly don't even know if we're going to be able to split the elements of the weapons in Season 10. But what I think they mean by that weapon's element, it means the fire staff is fire, the ice gauntlet is ice, and void gauntlet is void. Life staff is nature. Okay. Now, there's a couple of drawbacks for this one. If you are primarily a magical weapon person, then your abilities are going to be doing 7% less damage. Okay, that is straight off the go. The other thing is it forces you to play with a non-magical weapon as your secondary, meaning that you cannot really utilize this set, at least the 2 pieces, right? If you play with 2 magical weapons like Ice Gauntlet and Fire Staff. The good thing about it is if you have the 4 pieces and you're playing with like Ice Gauntlet and Fire Staff and you do a Fire Staff ability, then you're going to get 2 charges of the fire. If you use the Ice Gauntlet, then you're going to get 2 charges of the ice element. So you're going to have 10% resistance to ice, 10% resistance to fire. Again, I don't see how this is like super awesome, especially, we got our other sets to talk about. If it doesn't take away from your build, I can see people utilizing it just simply for the 10% resistance. Now, if you are not using 2 magical weapons, then I can see these being utilized, because the main thing about is like, yes, you get 10% more damage on your non-magical weapon for either your next hit, because this is again super confusing. It says consume a charge to add a 10% weapon damage as that element to that attack for 10 seconds. What does that attack mean? Is it just one attack, or is it the same attack for 10 seconds? Again, don't know. The wording is terrible. But anyways, so yes, if you are a magical weapon enjoyer and that is the main source of damage, then I don't think this is for you. But this is for you if you play a build like, let's say, Life Taker and Bow, for example, right? Where the Life Taker is there just to buff the bow, and the Life Taker has abilities like the Tether that they don't really do a lot of magical damage, so you don't really care about that minus 7% damage. But whenever you hit the enemy with a Tether and you have the 4 pieces, now your next 2 bow attacks will be doing 10% more damage. Again, the wording is horrible, but if it is that it only works on 1 attack, then yes, you use a Tether, and then you swap to the bow. You can do like a basic attack pen shot, and both of those are going to be increased by 10%. These I can also be utilized with like maybe like Inferno Hatchet, where Inferno is like the secondary and Hatchet is the primary. Maybe you do like a fireball and you don't really care about the damage of the fireball, then you swap up to the Hatchet and you do like a basic attack Raging Torrent, and both those attacks are going to be empowered by 10%. And on top of that, they are going to be doing fire damage. So maybe you can go like full fire damage, right? Maybe you don't even have to put a fire gem on the Hatchet anymore. You can put like a turquoise, so have more armor penetration, because it says activating an ability of a non-magical weapon will consume the charge and add 10% weapon damage as that element. Meaning that, I don't know if only 10% of the damage will be fire. Again, super confusing, but I can see this being utilized if you use a magical weapon as your offhand and your non-magical weapon is your primary. This one is all right. This one is okay. I can see, a couple of uses right there, like I mentioned. One thing that I noticed as well, which is reinforcing what I was telling you guys earlier about the set. As you can see, this guy has elementally charged set 5 out of 4. Obviously, only 4 will be active, so the 5th is not doing absolutely anything, which it means that again, you can get the set pieces on pretty much every single one of your pieces of gear. You just have to go to their respective place to farm the set that you are looking for. What I think is going to end up happening, a bunch of people are going to have like 1 set piece of one gear, 2 set piece of the other gear, another 2 set piece of the other gear, and it's just going to be a main mix and match of a bunch of different sets. Obviously, I think that right now we only have 4. But anyways, the build variety and the build building is just gonna go freaking crazy. The next one that we're going to be talking about, this one is the one that the developers talked in the video. This one is the Enrage one. And this one is the only of the set pieces that comes with a one thing. So the other ones is either 2 or 4 or 3 or 5. This one comes into 1. So pretty much everybody in the game can have the number 1 right here. And it goes something like this. Hitting a target within 13 meters, it grants you a stack of Enrage, increasing the outgoing damage by 1%, but also increases the damage taken by 0.5%, maximum 10 stacks, meaning that the number 1, after 10 hits, as long as you're within 13 meters of the enemy, you're going to be doing 10% more damage, but you're going to be taking 5% more damage, right? I mean, not too bad, not too bad, especially if DPS is all you're looking for. Then the third piece right here says increase your max Enrage stack to 15. Heavy attacks generate an additional stack of Enrage, meaning 2. And while Enrage, and above 70% health, you lose 5% of your maximum HP every half a second, meaning every second, you're going to lose 10% of your health. You're going to be doing 15% more damage after you hit the enemy 15 times, and you're going to be taking 7.5% more damage. Now, the thing is, and this is why I don't think that this bottom portion right here, it is good for PvP. I think the 3 and the 5 are specifically for PvE only, and pretty much the first one as well. The first one can have some uses in PvP, and maybe the 3 and 5 can have some use in PvP, but the problem is that for you to get the maximum damage effect, you need to hit the enemy many times to get that 15, to get the 25. And the thing is, it says, well Enrage and above 70% health, meaning that if you hit the enemy 1 time and you have 1 stack of Enrage, which it only gives you 1% damage, you are now losing 30% of your health. That's not a good trade-off in PvP specifically, since you're not hitting the enemy all of the time. So not only losing 30% of your health, but also taking more damage. This right here is where it goes all the way away from PvP, and it becomes a 100% a PvE gear set, right? And then at the 5 one says increase the max Enrage stack to 25, meaning 25% increased damage, and you take 12.5% more damage, and increase the duration of the Enrage by 50%. And it says while Enrage, all of your attacks deal an additional 8% damage while below 70% health, which if you are in PvE, you're pretty much going to be below that 70% health all of the time. Why? Because, well, you're losing 10% of your health every single second. And yeah, I can see this set being pretty much mandatory for every single person in a PvE group or raid, because it is going to increase your damage drastically, right? At the end, it's a grand total of 33% damage increase. Yes, you take 12.5% more damage, and you're going to lose 30% of your health. But in PvE, that is a good trade-off, because you shouldn't be getting hit that often, and having that extra 33% damage is going to be very helpful, for your team, so you guys can do a shitload more damage. Once again, it's amazing. This is an incredible gear set for PvE. For PvP, I think it's way too dangerous for you to be losing 30% of your health, taking more damage, and not having really a lot of control when it comes to all of these stacks. But it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty cool nonetheless. Then the next set that we're going to be talking about, this one is my favorite. And this one, I think, is the one that comes from the PvP track, because this one is a PvP only. The reason why I say that is because this one is the silencing one. And the silencing one, it says, whenever you have 2 pieces, hitting an enemy with an attack while all of your active weapon abilities are on cooldown, it silences your target for 2 seconds and yourself for 1 second. It can occur only once every 5 seconds, which is totally fine, because the enemy is going to be silenced for 2. And then it says silence blocks use of abilities. AI don't have abilities, meaning that regardless of the attack that the enemy is doing, it's not going to be considered an ability, meaning that this is a PvP only. Then at number 4, we have a well silence. You do 10% more base damage with a basic attack. Obviously, you already use all of your 3 abilities, so you silence the enemy, you silence yourself, so the only thing that you can do are basic attacks. So yeah, your basic attacks are going to be doing 10% more damage, and hitting a target will reduce the ability cooldown by 5%. Now, the thing is, remember, you only silence for 1 second. So realistically speaking, you can maybe get like 1 to 2 hits of the light attack if you're playing with like a fast hitting weapon. Okay. The reason why I think this set is my favorite and why I love it so much is because there's a lot of weapon in the game that they use their 3 abilities as their main like bread and butter combo. And what do I mean by this? For example, Sword and Shield. Whenever Sword and Shield does Leaping Strike, Shield Rush, and then Upheaval, well, that Upheaval, the moment that is coming out, even before it deals damage, it already goes on cooldown, which it means that that Upheaval is going to silence the enemy for 2 seconds. And usually after that, well, you're going to do a couple of, Sword and Shield light attacks. So essentially, Sword and Shield will be becoming so much more stronger. And again, not just Sword and Shield, weapons like the Flail as well, where you do like an Arcane Vortex, then you do a Trip Arcane Eruption. So the moment that you start the Arcane Eruption animation, the Arcane Eruption is going to go on cooldown, meaning that the Arcane Eruption will silence the enemy. And then you can follow that up by either 1-2 light attacks or weapon swapping and starting to use the abilities with your secondary weapon, because at the end of the day, you're only silenced for 1 second. So imagine that you're playing like Sword and Shield and Flail, and you do Leaping Strike, Shield Rush, Upheaval, you silence the enemy. 1, 2, 3 with the Sword and Shield. Swap to the Flail. Vortex, Trip, Arcane Eruption, boom. Silence the enemy again. Another 2 seconds. That is really, really, really strong. And I will see every single PvPer pretty much. It is mostly for weapons that have like a very good combination of abilities. Now, it does work pretty much for every weapon as long as you want to dump all of the abilities. Like if you're playing with bow, you can do like Poison Arrow, Explosive Arrow, and then Rain of Arrow. When you send it into the air, it's gonna land, it's gonna silence the enemy. With a musket, you can do like Powder Burn, Roll, Power Shot, then Stopping Power. That Stopping Power is gonna silence the enemy. So yes, this set right here, it is specifically for PvP. The 4 pieces, not mandatory whatsoever, but the 2 pieces, boy oh boy, is going to be amazing. Amazing. And the other thing is, you might be able to combine this bonus set piece right here with something like like a Moonstones. Like you deal 20% more damage when your active weapon abilities are on cooldown. By the way, active weapon means the weapon that you have out at the moment, not the weapons that you have equipped, okay? So if you have a Fire Staff and an Ice Gauntlet and you're playing with a Fire Staff, that is your active weapon. The Ice Gauntlet is your inactive weapon. So yes, you're gonna be able to do crazy combinations with this silent set in PvP. And just think about it, right? You hit a healer with the Shield Rush and Upheaval, and that Upheaval is gonna do so much more damage, and they're gonna be silent for 2 seconds, meaning that they cannot do a repose or flash away or social distancing or berserk or literally what have you. You know what I mean? If the enemy is casting a burnout and your abilities are on cooldown and you hit them, boom, you cancel the burnout. So yes, this is going to be super awesome for PvP. And then I cannot wait to see people's frustration whenever they got hit by a full combo that it took like 40, 50, 60% of their health, and they want to react but they can't because they're silent for 2 seconds. This is gonna be freaking crazy. But anyway, that does it for the gear sets. The next thing that I want to talk about is going to be the infixes. And these are some of the infixes that we have gathered so far. And boy, oh boy, do they look fun as hell, okay? Look at this first one right here. Critical Storm. Once every 0.5 seconds when you create a target, you gain a stack of a Storm Charge on self, lasting 13 seconds, right? At a 6 Storm Charges, hitting a target with an ability will consume all of the charges and trigger a bolt of lightning, dealing an additional 100% weapon damage. That is crazy, you guys. Meaning that this, if you want to go for like a critical build, or maybe, you hit the enemy a lot from behind or whatnot, whatever the case is, after you create the enemy, 6 times, your next ability hit is going to be doing 100% more weapon damage. Like, just think about it, right? You're doing like a whirlwind and you're hitting a bunch of enemies that are creating ba 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 ba, or you're hitting the enemy behind it ba 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 with Tempered Fury. And the moment that you're done and you got probably the 6 Storm Charges and you hit the enemy with a Reap, ba ba, that rip is going to be doing 100% more damage, you know, like as a lightning bolt, and that's gonna chunk the enemy by like another 1, 2, 3,000 damage. So this is super cool if you want to go for a critical build. In PvE, this is also incredible because, you know, in PvE you're behind the enemy like a lot of the time, or if you're like a ranged character, you can have like those free headshots. So this thing right here is going to once again skyrocket the damage that we do in PvE, especially if you combine it with the Enrage set that I was talking to you guys about a little bit earlier. Then the next one right here is called 14 Stun, right? This is against the guys that have an incredible amount of freaking grits. It says whenever you hit a target with an active grid or an interruptible like the hatchet, so if you're hitting a guy with berserk on, you deal 5% increased base damage and you gain a stack of thwarts. Melee heavy attacks, while a 10 stack, it will consume all of those stacks and inflict a 1-second stun to the target. 10-second cooldown on stun application. Okay, so it means that this is for melee weapons primarily. You cannot do it as a ranged weapon. So, and again, it's whenever you're fighting those super greedy boy, and there's nothing you can do about it because you cannot CC them because they have permanent grid or they're interruptible. So what you do now is you get those 10 stack, and whenever you hit them with the heavy attack and you stun them, then you can follow that up with a CC that you've been wanting to connect, right? Then we have chain lightning. It says once every 10 seconds, damaging enemies with a magic weapon, right? Which is the opposite of this one. This one is for melee weapons. This one is for magic weapons. Damaging an enemy with a magic weapon ability will cast a chain lightning that hits off to 5 unique targets and deal 50% of your weapon damage to each. That is freaking incredible. Because let's say the fire staff at a like 350 intelligence or something like that, it has roughly like 1,400, 1,500 damage, meaning that 50% of your weapon damage to each, it means that you're going to be hitting the enemies from like 500 to like 800 damage 5 times. You know, 5 different enemies. That is going to be insane increase in your DPS, and it's going to make your hard rune charge up even faster. And the fact is, you might even get a bunch of kills with this chain lightning thingy on somebody that is just trying to run away, and then all of a sudden they get chain line in the back. 50%, and it's really cool. It says, however, though, when the trigger happens, you take 30% lightning damage. It's okay. It's a good trade-off because you're hitting a bunch of enemies. You do take 30% of the damage, so you probably get like a 300 to 400 damage done to yourself. But I think it's really cool, really fun. And once again, anybody can get this. You know, these are not bound to your weapon, or I mean, some of them require your specific weapon, but what I mean is regardless of your build, you can slap any of this, you can slap any of this, any of this, any of this, any of this. And that was pretty much all I got for the gear sets and the infixes. The build making and the theory crafting in season 10 is literally going to go over the roof, you guys. It's going to be literally insane. There's going to be so many different build varieties and so many ways that we can do damage. And now with all of the weapons scaling with 2 attributes, like the fire staff is scaling with dexterity, that means that we can do bow and fire staff for like a full-on, you know, like a dot build. And you know, the great axe is scaling with intelligence, so we can play like a great axe in fire staff without utilizing the abyss. So yes, they have opened the doors for an incredible amount of build variety, and I cannot wait to get my hands into season 10 and just start playing and having an incredible amount of fun with these gear sets and infix perks. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Let me know which one is your guys' favorite, and let me know which one is the one that you guys are going to be playing in season 10 with. If I missed anything, or if I didn't cover some sort of information that I'm not aware of, please let me know in the comment section down below. Remember that we stream every single day on Twitch and on YouTube, so if you guys want to come and check me out there and just have a little chat, yeah, just come by. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys this time, and see you guys next time. Peace.